push it. But push it real good. Bow, 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 bow. I think we're live. Vocab said push it, so then I started singing push it. But I also pushed the button while I was saying push it, so just got to verify that we're all good. I still don't trust that even though it tells me I'm live, I still don't trust it until I actually see it coming up on YouTube. There we go. Oh, there's me singing push it. I just feel like I'm going through a time machine. All right, we're good, dude.
All right.
All right, vocab. So you got your MAGA hat on.
Justified sola fide.
That doesn't sound like MAGA.
Because it's not.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Hey, vocab. So we wanted to... Wait, everyone hear us okay? Let me double check. Everyone hear us? Go ahead and talk, vocab.
What's going on? How I'm sounding, ma'am?
You sound fine to me. Just want to verify.
Good. I can turn up the volume.
No, I think you're good. I think you're good.
Needed.
I think you're good.
All right.
We just check for complaints from reliable complainers. Some people complain and you can't actually trust them. All right. Well, we've got some stuff going around. We got some stuff going on, vocab. Some stuff going on. It reminds me of how things were for me, like, 15, 16 years ago, where I'm telling people about Islam and not enough people take it seriously as a topic of discussion. And now it seems like something, although not nearly on the same scale, but you have the Hebrew Israelites, and it seems like there's stories about them in the news all the time, and yet very few people seem to be paying attention at all to it. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are paying attention to now a little bit more, of course. What people are noticing specifically, it seems, what's catching people's attention is the anti-Semitic aspect of Hebrew Israelism. There's a lot of elements to Hebrew Israelism. Christian apologists especially dislike their twisting the Bible to justify bad theology. The world may or may not care as much about that, but there are people in the world who do care about anti-Semitism, and so that aspect of Hebrew Israelism is catching their attention, and people are willing to criticize that aspect of Hebrew Israelism as of now. At least some people are. Some people are actually agreeing with it. So there's some interesting, situations going on. I mean, I wouldn't wear a MAGA hat. This is justified sola fide, but Donald Trump just met with Ye and Nick Fuentes, I think is how you say his name, who who makes some of the stuff Kanye say look remedial, and so it's
I've seen his name pop up. That Nick guy on Twitter a bunch. Who is that? So everyone's talking about him.
Well, I know him as a YouTuber, but I don't know a whole lot about him. At first, whenever you hear the media says this guy is that or this guy is that, you're kind of always skeptical of that because you don't trust the media's identification of anybody.
Yeah.
But then I watched some of his stuff, and he was on there saying, "Hey, this is how he talks. You Jews better watch out because these things always they start out of nowhere and then they go from 0 to 60 against you people real fast. You're not wrong that it's not gradual because people are ready, and you guys are going to like people like me because since I'm a Christian," this is what he said now, "since I'm a Christian, that factors into stuff but other people aren't Christians. So the Jews better watch out." I mean, he was saying this and like it was some kind of concession. He was basically saying violence against Jewish people in society does ramp up real fast, and that could happen in America, and the Jews better be aware. And he seemed like he said, and the reason is because of you guys. He said it's because of you, In the clip I watched, I don't know if people know what I'm talking about, the stuff I was watching. I watched some of his other stuff. So it's wild that he's meeting with Donald Trump with Kanye. And you sit there and wonder, is it because they're both anti-Semitic? Is that their shared Is that their shared? What does Nick Fuentes have in common with Kanye? I don't know. What does Trump have in common with him? I don't know. But it's odd they're meeting down there in Florida. But they are.
Yeah, I've been wondering, because a lot of Muslim women were confused with everyone jumping on the Andrew Tate bandwagon so rapidly, because what that guy's been saying for a couple years is basically Muslims know how to keep their women in check. And again, this is Andrew Tate saying it. He's saying Muslims won't allow you to mock Muhammad. They'll kill you. They'll just kill you. He said if you were to make fun of Muhammad in London, walk down the street, you wouldn't survive to the end of the block. And he was praising them for this, saying that he doesn't disagree with this. He respects them for it. And then he converts to Islam. So anyone watching is going, wow, this guy just converted to Islam. But if you look at the reasons he's been praising Islam, it's actually disturbing. It looks like something, he's using it. He's looking for something that will justify his behavior. And so, you could imagine what would happen like right now if Kanye, if like Kanye said, you know what, I'm converting to Islam because they share my anti-Semitism. It'd like be shouted from the rooftops instantly. You see, he sees the truth of Islam. So it's interesting that, the people who share certain views do come together. So yeah, it would be a interesting yet disturbing if some of these guys are coming together because of anti-Semitism. And what you said about Nick Fuentes, he is right in the sense that stuff can ramp up very quickly against. I mean, we saw it like when COVID started, then all of a sudden hate crimes against Asian Americans shot up, right? Because everyone's they're complaining about China and stuff like this, and then people, I'm assuming people who already had a problem, people who already disliked Asians, just took this as okay. Now I can get away with it, and so yeah, you always have to be concerned that because you have a group like the Jews, who you always have this anger from certain people towards them, and so the idea that someone could just use that very quickly and get everyone who's already anti-Semitic but kind of quiet about it suddenly to become vocal about it, bad stuff can happen pretty quickly, especially when the support for it is coming from world-class musicians, world-class athletes, and so on. So anyway, this is why we need to address these issues when we're coming, because notice what's going on here. You've got this ideology, Black Hebrew Israelism, seems to be spreading rapidly, seems to be influencing a lot of people, and no one's talking about it. And yet there's some really disturbing views that they have that are spreading. And I just have to say that the church has a pretty poor track record of dealing with cults when they're small, right? It's like, okay, hey, there's a cult forming over there. Let's just ignore it until it's too big to stop, and then we'll respond to it, and we'll start doing some apologetics then. There's you, and there's maybe a couple others who are dealing with this when given how rapidly this is spreading. Again, it just seems like every time I go on any media site, there's something that involves the Hebrew Israelites on there, even though people might not realize or even have a clue what the Hebrew Israelites are yet.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff that happens that's said that people don't realize is connected to Hebrew Israelism that it is. So people haven't been able to pick out the identifiers, kind of the marks, to be able to determine what's what yet. And so that's part of what I try to do, is to show people, hey, this is this or that, whatever the story is at the time, is directly connected to a specific ideology. And sometimes it takes some digging. But I think more and more people are becoming aware, and we'll just stay on top of it, because it seems like it's only going to grow. I mean, can you show one of the videos where IUIC is getting ready to protest at the Barclays Center, or maybe one of the pictures or images. I think there was one where I had them chanting. I don't know if you did that. It was like from a Twitter screen grab or something. If you don't, I don't know which one you have, but I want people to see what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I have two clips. So I have one clip. That's where I have one clip of them chanting. Sounds like they're chanting "We're the real Jews" or something like that. And then another one where some Jews, a couple of young Jewish guys, show up to a Black Lives Matter rally, and they say they're there to show their solidarity, and they get run off by some Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, and so we're tying this all together now. So we talked about Kyrie together. We've talked about Kanye a little bit, but it's not going away. And one of the reasons it's not going away, not just because Hebrew Israelism is growing, not shrinking, is also because IUIC, out of all the Hebrew Israelite groups, is taking this kind of as their 15 minutes of fame. Mm-hmm. Now, I say that tongue-in-cheek because I know that their time in the spotlight is not over. So, but I'm saying they see it as an opportunity to grab roots, to grab awareness for their ideology. So all their social media has been ramped up, and it's filled with Kyrie and Kanye-related things. And they're saying, the truth can't get canceled. This melodramatic, they're calling it the battle for the birthright. All this kind of stuff. And I've got images and stuff to show all this, what I'm talking about. And I want to focus on one specific verse you asked about today, or yesterday actually, which is Revelation 2:9, that is used by Hebrew Israelites and has been used by Semites for a while now. So the KKK, the Christian Identity people, the British Israelites, they have all used this verse. I'm not aware of it having a long history in the Christian tradition, although maybe we'll find out that that's different at some point, as far as the verse being used in the way that IUIC and groups like them use it. But it's part and parcel to this ideology.
Let's go through one or two video clips real quick. And Kyrie, wasn't he Uncle Drew, man?
Well, you look at old videos of like Kyrie, and he's out on a boat with a bunch of ladies of the fair persuasion, grabbing their posterior, and chilling like a playboy type thing. But that's I guess what NBA players do. I guess, I don't know, at least some. But it seems like now he's in a different position or place, at least as far as what he's talking about or what he's sharing, which is like this spiritual journey that he's continuing to be on, where people forgot last year Kyrie was fasting during Ramadan. People forgot about that. Yeah, and it was when he wouldn't take the COVID shot. So it's all going on at once with Kyrie. And now he's into Hebrew Israelism.
Yeah, I just saw something. Someone can search for it if someone wants to look it up. But something where he just made a donation to a mosque, like black Muslim mosque, like from the 60s, back when it like might have been Nation of Islam. I'm not sure, but it specifically said black Muslim mosque. So yeah, and it looks like there's this rhythm to things. Some famous person like Kanye or Kyrie or something like that will say something that affirms some element of Hebrew Israelism, and then there's a backlash because of the connection to anti-Semitism, and then these guys sort of get shut down or lose some contracts or something like that, get penalized somehow, and then the actual Hebrew Israelites then sort of ride that wave of popularity to say, and notice what they get to say. They get to say, "You see, we're right. You see, there's this conspiracy to hold down the truth about our movement," and it just seems like that's, I don't know. It seems like that's going to keep happening because 2 or 3 weeks from now, you're going to get some other, famous athlete or musician or something like that saying something positive about it. And then it'll be the same thing. It'll be the person gets denounced for anti-Semitism. Then maybe the person apologizes, but, IUIC and some of these other groups will use that momentum to reach people who might not know what it is, because there are still people who don't know what these groups are and what their arguments are, and all of a sudden they'll get some exposure. And so, I guess I'm guessing we should be discussing some of their arguments. So let's go ahead and check out. We'll go ahead and check out this clip from the BLM rally.
You know what you just said, David. Let me name drop a little bit. I was interviewed by the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. I know you can't really see it on here, but when they interviewed me, that's one thing I specifically said. Israelism is becoming part of the plausibility structure of Black America. Christian activist and author Vocab Malone told the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, referring to a social context in which certain ideas are considered credible. Quote, this is me getting quoted accurately right here. The suspicions that a lot of folks have toward the Jewish community, they think they're vindicated now. Now, obviously, I'm not agreeing with those things, but that's exactly what I told the JTA recently.
So you're part of the conspiracy.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. They're going to be on that more than ever. And I'm just like, I'm a Protestant Christian. I'm not a dispensationalist, but I'm willing to be an ally and show the light of Christ if I can to unbelieving people, whether they be Jewish or non-Jewish. And here we go. This is the hour.
And it is interesting that like the level of conspiracy theorization that goes on, like everything's a conspiracy. Like I've walked up to Hebrew Israelites with you on the street, and they immediately start saying, oh, the FBI, the only way you knew, even though they're like broadcasting live and you can look up where they are and go see them. As soon as you show up, they start saying that the FBI sent you. The FBI is spying on them and then sending in Vocab Malone to argue with them.
That literally just happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and check out a clip here.
Amalek, what y'all doing down here? You live here?
Not far.
You don't live here? Y'all know these, we the real Jews, right?
Y'all gotta go. Y'all gotta go. This ain't y'all fight. Y'all gotta go. Okay. But you showing solidarity. We don't need no solidarity.
Named Jacob. Jacob became Israel. Jacob and Esau, twin brothers, and the Bible says that both will be blessed, but only one is chosen to carry the line of the Messiah. Amalek, the Amalekites, are seen in the Hebrew Scriptures as an enemy of Esau. And if you remember, they are actually so bad that it gets to the point that they're told that the Israelites are told that they're supposed to be completely wiped out. 1 Samuel 15. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt. And that refers back to, if you look during Exodus and Deuteronomy, there's these happenings. And of course, the deal with Balaam. If you remember Balaam, the false prophet, he called Amalek the first of nations. And so they've been around a while, and there's these battles with the Amalekites, but God tells Saul to wipe them entirely out, but he doesn't. He keeps them around, and that's a problem. And it becomes a problem later on because a descendant of Amalek tries to wipe out all the Jewish people during the days of Esther under the Persian Empire. Remember Haman? He was an Amalekite. And so it's this historical enemy of Israel from Esau. And so one West Hebrew Israelites believe that people of European descent are Edomites or descendants of Esau. And they believe that out of the sons of Esau, the tribes of Esau, if you will, the worst or perhaps the chiefest is Amalek and the Amalekites. So all the white people are staunch enemies against the Israelites, will be the way they would frame it. These are one West Israelites. Not all Israelites share this exact schema. And within that, Amalek is the worst of the Edomites. And the Amalekites are those that they would view as the Jewish people. So sometimes they'll call Jewish people Khazars or imposters or even Edomites. But if they're being more precise according to the theology, if they're one Westers, they'll say Amalek or the Amalekites. So that's what's going on. It's a way to say, you say that you're a Jewish person, but actually you're one of our worst historical enemies because we're the true Israelites. You're an imposter. Get out of here. So there's, and for them, there's automatic hatred, automatically. Although I want to remind everybody about a Bible verse discussing all this because this dips into Old Testament history, right? Let's say you're confronted with this and you can't remember everything I just said or whatever. You do need to remember this verse. It's a beautiful verse. Deuteronomy 23. I'm going to read verses 7 and 8. This is an instruction to Israel. Do not despise, or let's read it from the ESV. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. You should not abhor an Egyptian, because you were a sojourner in his land. So Yahweh, by Moses, gives two commands about two people groups, especially in the midst of the Israelites. Hey, if you have Edomites in your midst, don't hate on, don't try to exclude them because they're your brothers. Those Egyptians, don't abhor, despise them because you were once foreigners to them and now they may be foreigners amongst you. And watch what the next verse says. Deuteronomy 23:8. Children born to them in the third generation may enter the assembly of Yahweh. Now, what does that mean? That means after they've lived amongst the Israelites for 3 generations, those children cannot just be part of the nation of Israel in a vague sense like living amongst them. They can actually enter into full covenant participation. That's what the phrase assembly or congregation of the Lord means, or assembly of Yahweh, depending on how you translate it. That's what it means because they're already with them, see? So here's my point. God said way back then, don't despise Edomites. That would include Amalekites. And they can enter into assembly of the Lord. I'm just saying, that's in the Bible, but they act like it's been changed. They act like that verse has basically been abrogated. But I want to bring out Deuteronomy 23 all the way back during the days of early Israel. Now, that clip you just played, David, you know, those Jewish men were there at a Black Lives Matter rally in 2020. Mm-hmm. And while they're there, there's automatic hostility towards them, even though they said, "Hey, we're here to show." Yeah,
we can actually finish the clip here in a second.
Yeah, this is in Philadelphia, by the way, everybody. This is in Philadelphia, and this was shared on Twitter. But go ahead.
I do need to solve some sort of problem real quick. People were saying that when I had the video on the screen, they couldn't hear us. There is some setting here. I basically had all this set up on my other computer. When I put it on this one, I did not tweak the settings. So that is one setting. Namely, it will turn off. It'll cut off our mics when we play the clip. I'll just go ahead and play it, and then look for how to fix it real quick. So
probably just got to unmute the mic. Sometimes it does that automatically.
All right, let's see what happens here.
Amalek, what y'all doing down here? You live here?
Not far.
You live here?
Y'all gotta go.
Y'all know these we the real Jews, right?
Y'all gotta go. Y'all gotta go. This ain't y'all fight. Y'all gotta go. We're showing solidarity. We don't need no solidarity. Okay. We good. Walk off. Let's walk.
Yo, start. Get the out.
All right, I think they can hear us now. I think I unmuted us. Everyone hears us now, right? Just verify. We're about halfway through the clip, so we got the Amalekite. We got the
and listen what they're going to say as the Jewish men walk away. They're going to say, "Philly waking up," mm-hmm. Revelation 2:9, synagogue of Satan. They're going to throw that verse at them in that way.
And what's crazy is, I mean, they push one of these. Someone in a mask pushes one of these young Jewish guys, and like, there's cops all over the place. Do it right in front of the cops. Interesting stuff. You can see cops in the background with their riot gear and stuff. But let's go ahead and check this out.
Get the out of here! Get the about to get trash, cuz.
See the cops back there?
Get him on it! Get him on it! Get him on it! Get off our block!
Philly waking up. Revelation 2:9, the synagogue is Satan.
Go ahead and play that. Go ahead and play that again real quick, that last part.
Philly waking up.
Philly's waking up.
Revelation 2:9, the synagogue is Satan. Amalek. What y'all
right.
doing down?
All right, there we go.
So they're quoting, so you've got some Jews, like in yarmulkes, showing up to a BLM rally, saying that they're there to show solidarity. And they're told by the Hebrew Israelites, no, you can't be here because you're fake Jews and we're real Jews. Now, what in the world would that have to do with like whether you support like suppose you granted it, right? I mean, don't you want everyone to agree that Black Lives Matter and whatever you're saying about police? If someone says, hey, we're on the same page here, they're like, no, get out of here, you can't be here joining in, being part of this. And then they quote, they say Revelation 2:9, and Philly's waking up.
Yeah, and I mean, don't you see it? I mean, can Hebrew Israelites be violent? Does Hebrew Israelism rhetoric and theology have latent and I would even say obvious potential towards violence? Yes. Now, I don't ever claim that Hebrew Israelism is going to be or is like elements of Salafi Islam with terror cells all across America, or that goal or that kind of thing, or the same kind of global jihadist structure. No, I'm not saying that. But it is something. It is something there, and there are some serious problems and concerns as it grows. You're going to get more folks like this. Notice these guys weren't even arguing with him. They were just walking, and the second they saw the yarmulke, they accosted those guys. And even when they're like, we're in solidarity, they're like, you better get out of here. This is going to happen to you. And they lay hands on the guys. Mm-hmm. Like that talk about escalation. And, this is a problem where this is happening more and more. In 2019, in November of 2019, in Jersey City, when David and his girlfriend Francine, well, by the way, David Anderson, everybody, and Francine.
Not me?
Not you.
Not David Wood? Okay.
Yeah, not David Wood and his girlfriend Francine. Two Hebrew Israelites went into the kosher deli next to a Jewish school they were going to shoot up, but the door was locked, and they tried to kill as many Jewish people as they could. And, by the way, killed a Christian in the process, an immigrant. A brother from South America who was an Assemblies of God Christian who worked for the Jewish people in that store, killed him. Somebody that would have been on the 12 tribes chart, but whatever. When that happened, it was really tough to watch because during the cleanup, there was video that came out where bystanders were seeing what happened, and regular people influenced by these ideas of anti-Semitic thought and hate were saying, oh, I'm glad it was Jews. I'm glad there's less of them in our neighborhood. And I don't care that they're dead. I mean, literally, these videos were floating around Twitter. I shared some of them back when this happened. And it was just tragic to see the cold-hearted, callous nature of it. While there's these innocent folks dead, working in a kosher deli, and folks are imbibing anti-Semitic hatred to the point where they would have gleeful attitudes and apathy, to say the least, over homicide against Jewish people just because they're Jewish. I mean, that's a scary thing. And if this gets more and more in our cities, there's going to be some real issues. I mean, think about Brooklyn, especially in places like Brooklyn, where you have different kinds of communities living right next to each other. I don't know, man. I mean, I have some real concerns, and that's why apologetics does matter, ladies and gentlemen. It matters because part of what our job is to do is to expose the lie. Expose the lie. I have one of the lies we could expose right now if you're ready to look at one of the things I sent you.
Yeah, what do you want to check out? Now, we do have one more video clip, and then we have, we got some stuff with Kyrie, some stuff on a flyer. Yeah,
can you show the flyer and read the verse down there at the bottom We'll look at that verse down there at the bottom.
On the bottom, because I have it in two pieces to fit it on the screen. So.
Okay. Well, where it says the Revelation 2:9 section.
Okay, so I have the top on. So it says just to give people the context what this flyer is about. It says the truth about anti-Semitism. The so-called blacks and Hispanics are the 12 tribes of Israel. You are the children of the slave trade. The prophets warned us that if we broke God's commandments, we would be punished as a people. Read Deuteronomy 28:15-68. This happened to no other nation. And we have some questions. So you want to go down to the bottom?
Right. Well, let's just real quick. So let me tell you what this flyer is, everybody. Leave it there for just a second. This is the flyer, everybody, that the cult known as IUIC was handing out outside of the Barclays Center. That's where the Nets play basketball in Brooklyn. They're passing these flyers out. IUIC stands for Israel United in Christ. It's a Pacific One West Hebrew Israelite group, the largest membership, looming around 10,000. And they wear purple and gold. That's very distinctive for that. And I did a show recently where Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics actually took a clip from them when they're outside the center and put energy, like it was positive. But then later on said, I didn't know who the group was. But that's what's going on because IUIC is the main one doing the demonstrations. So this is the flyer they handed out specifically to make for this Kyrie situation. And I want to show you the bottom half of it. The top half is just them saying, we're the real Jews, basically. That's their argument. Now let's look at the next part of it here on the second half, because that gets into Revelation 2:9.
All right, so we actually have Revelation 2:9 there. It says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. There is just reading what they're saying here on the track. There is a widely recognized pattern of enslavement, systematic oppression, bullying, legal manipulation, and anti-black political lobbying, including silencing black voices in media outlets worldwide. The biblical Israelites are targeted and accused of hate day and night without rest. Our knowledge of our heritage and laws has been systematically removed from us through the monstrous Holocaust known as the transatlantic slave trade. They may lie to the world and deny us of our birthright, yet Jesus the Christ, our black Messiah, confirms the truth of who we are. We are not anti-Semitic, we are Semitic.
Okay. So I'm going to
Why you hating, vocab? Why you hating?
Yeah.
Well, I just rested their airtight case right there.
Well, you reading that, David. I know you've been around IUIC. Remember that time we were in San Diego when they played peekaboo through the window at us and called the cops on us?
Oh yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, that's IUIC
they called
for
the
you,
cops.
right?
They called the popo on us.
Because three of us were standing on the public sidewalk in front of their place.
We weren't even interacting. We're just recording a video.
Yeah, and yet they show up at churches doing the church blitz, and they'll march outside the Barclays Center. But looking at that, I'm going to read some stuff from some commentaries about Revelation 2:9. But when you read that just now, what's your thoughts? Just as a, Christian brother focuses on Islam, like when you read that little thing, like what's your just initial reaction? I love to hear as people get exposed to the stuff more and more, what they think.
Yeah, well, I mean, the claim that they're the true Jews, that's just weird. I mean, to me, it would be like me coming out saying I'm the true Chinese or something like that, right? Very, very strange. I understand the underlying sort of resentment that can give rise to those kinds of views. If you're from an oppressed group and you see this other oppressed group that is, the chosen people in the Bible, you might want to identify with that. But they're just really, really bad arguments. As far as Revelation 2:9, I'm sure you have commentary. It's nothing I've ever studied. I would be interested in, because you study this stuff. I've just always read Revelation 2:9 in a fashion similar to like what the Apostle Paul says, that people who not everyone who's a Jew outwardly is a Jew inwardly. And in that sense, you could say it about, I mean, you could say not everyone who's a Christian outwardly is a Christian inwardly. Not everyone who's a Muslim outwardly is a Muslim inwardly. It's a little different with Jews because, you know, it's an ethnicity in addition to being a religion. So Paul points out that not everyone who is a descendant of the actual 12 tribes has the same faith as Abraham. So Paul draws this distinction. I mean, as far as circumcision goes, so you have circumcision, according to Paul, you're supposed to be, you know, inwardly circumcised, referring to like a, you know, your orientation towards God within you. And physical circumcision is supposed to be an outward sign of this inward orientation. And Paul's pointing out that, hey, just because, you know, you're circumcised doesn't mean you share the faith of Abraham. And so in that sense, he's drawing a distinction between two different meanings of Jew. You have your ethnicity, but do you really share the position of Abraham? So that's how I have read Revelation 2:9, but it is a different author, so I don't actually know if that's what he's referring to. Do you you've been through it? What's your take on it?
So John here, you know, he is, I mean, he's quoting Jesus, but he's agreeing with himself in John 8, where Jesus is like, you're not of your father Abraham, you're of your father the devil, because you guys are all liars and murderers. See, that is putting it on a moral, spiritual type level. It's not some ethnic claim. It's not saying you're actually not sons of Abraham. It has to do with the model or pattern of faith. In the same way, in Galatians, Christians are said to be sons of Abraham because they follow his model or pattern of faith. And that's why you got to have justified sola fide. Sorry to the ortho bros in the audience, because I saw some of you lurking earlier. And this hat is for you in Jesus' name. Now, they agree with each other, Paul and John and Jesus here, about this issue. So that is right. Now, let's look at a few things here. This is a great commentary I recommend. It's a standard one, Expositor's Bible Commentary. And this is one of the older covers. This part, Revelation, by Alan Johnson. Let me read this here, and it sheds light on what we're talking about here. All right. In Smyrna, economic pressure may have been the first step toward persecution. Sometimes even today, for Christians to be loyal to their Lord entails economic loss. The risen Lord also knows the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Trouble arose from the Jewish community. Certain Jews, not all of them, and I bring that point out to you, everybody, because there would be believers at this church itself who would be Jewish people, and John himself is Jewish. The human author of the book of Revelation is a Jewish man. Okay, so I'm bringing that out here. So it's clearly not all. And here's what it says. Trouble. Okay. Trouble arose to the Jubilee. Certain Jews use malicious untruths, that's slander, to incite persecution to the impoverished saints in Smyrna. So that's where this is taking place. They say they are Jews but are not, shows that even though these men claim descent from Abraham, they were not his true descendants because they did not have faith in Christ, the seed of Abraham. That's Galatians 3:16, Galatians 3:29. So if you claim to be Jewish, yet you're not aligned with the true Jew, the true Israelite, the true seed of Abraham, Jesus, then how are you really Jewish in the biblical sense, in a spiritual way? But this is not about blood, right? In fact, John 1 says it's not about blood. It literally says that in John 1. These unbelieving and hostile Jews probably viewed the Jewish Christians of Smyrna as heretics of the worst sort, deserving ridicule and rejection. Whether Christians in general are now the true Jews or whether it is those Jews in Smyrna who became Christians who are the true Jews is debatable. So there's a debate about what the church's role or place is in all this, if you especially are a Gentile Christian. And that's where dispensationalists and more covenantal people like myself would have some disagreement. But none of us are saying, therefore, ethnically, the Jewish people are not, in some way Semitic or don't have any rightful claim to that, even if they're proselytes or through intermarriage, because guess what? That's allowable. Last paragraph from this commentary, but are of the synagogue of Satan, reveals for the first time in Revelation the ultimate source of the persecution of Christians is Satan. Many further references to the archenemy of the followers of Christ are found throughout the book. In fact, he's one of the principal actors in the apocalyptic drama. And I'm going to skip down here. Synagogue of Satan refers then to certain Jews in ancient Smyrna who, motivated by Satan, slandered the church there. The term should never be indiscriminately applied to all Jewish synagogues. So sometimes Christians get accused of being anti-Semitic just for their beliefs alone. This does happen sometimes. And there's been plenty of people calling themselves Christians who have fulfilled that stereotype or that accusation. Let us not be those kinds of Christians. But here, this evangelical scholar recognizes this. The term should never be indiscriminately applied to all Jewish synagogues. It's specific, it's contextual, and what it has to do is if you're slandering the church and persecuting the church that way, then you're doing what Satan does. He's a slanderer, right? My goodness, you know who would meet this qualification better than anybody I can think of? Is groups like IUIC. They slander the church. They say the church is filled with liars. They go after the church, and they're not ethnically Jews either. So they meet both qualifications.
No, it is perfect. I mean, you've got a verse saying, "Hey, not everyone who claims to be a Jew is actually a Jew," and then you've got IUIC using this to show that actual Jews aren't Jews, and that they're the true Jews. This is some wild stuff. But I'm trying to get the reasoning down here. So is the claim, because I don't know exactly their thoughts on the timeline. Are they saying that back then Jesus is talking about like Amalekites pretending to be Jews? I mean, are they saying this goes all the way back then? Like even then there were like the people who claim to be Jews now were, their ancestors were claiming to be Jews back then, and Jesus is calling them out because they're the true Jews who later become, who later are over here, Hispanics and blacks in the United States. Are they going that far? Are they claiming that? I don't know.
So GMS, if you remember GMS, we've dealt with them when we went to Harlem and Morningside Park, for example. One of their leaders, in fact, one of the men who was there that day when you were with me in Harlem, Gabar, he said, look, we know this is really just talking about certain actual ethnic Jews of our own people who were persecuting the followers of Yeshua, or they call him Yahushai at the time. So he actually admitted that was the context, but then seemed to indicate, but we could still use this verse against those small hats. That's what he derisively calls the Jewish people as small hats, a reference to the yarmulke. And so at least one guy, GMS, seems to know that it's not contextually applied that way, but we can still use it that way. Because I've asked them, well, wait a minute, are you saying that later on when there would be Jewish imposters, according to you, that Jesus is referring to this like a futuristic thing? And some of them said, yeah, can't the Bible be prophetic? Yeah, it can be, but there's no indication that this is saying in the future you're going to have this situation. It seems it's obviously talking about in Smyrna right there, right then. So other ones will say, well, yeah, imposters had already started to infiltrate into our people. So I've got different versions because the timeline does not make sense, because most of them don't think that this happened until later, specifically like the Bar Kokhba rebellion. Some do think it happened at 70, so if they think John was written at 90, some seem to think it was going on, but then it's like you're already saying that like European-looking Jews had infiltrated, and that's who's at Smyrna persecuting the Black Israelites? It's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. They don't use it very clear. They just use it really as a kind of a hammer against any Jewish person that they recognize as Jewish to say, you're part of the synagogue of Satan. Because that's really what they think. So they don't really care about the verse's real meaning, to be honest, in my view, at all. Because that's really what they're about. But if you actually ask them, well, how did this happen? They start telling stories about the Khazars the Khazarian theory that that basically all modern Jews are descendants of Khazars, which are like Turkish barbarian peoples from the Caucasus Mountains kind of thing. But that's way later, you know, in the early part of the Middle Ages. So that doesn't make sense about this verse now, and that kind of thing. So it's really almost irrelevant in my view, because they just use it because they view it as basically a good anti-Semitic verse. Now, we obviously would say they're reading it wrong, you know, obviously. But let me read one other thing. This is from a nice little commentary, New Century Bible Commentary Revelation, Beasley Murray's. And notice we haven't just read commentaries, but it's part of what I want to do because I want to show that their understanding of this verse is totally out of left field. The opposition of the Jews at Smyrna to Christians was not untypical. This is page 81. Acts and the epistles of Paul provide many illustrations of Jewish violence against the church. So this is true. That's a fact of history. Now, sadly, we can now say that it's been returned by people calling themselves Christians, especially in Europe during Christendom or whatever. It's bad. But here we are in this verse. Now we're on page 82. And Christian writers in the next century attest the continuance of their active hostility. Never was opposition so extreme as at Smyrna, when Polycarp was accused as a Christian. So pause real quick. Polycarp was an important Christian leader, was martyred at age 86. He was at Smyrna when this happened, and so you can actually see some active Jewish persecution against Christian during his time, and that's pretty early. Polycarp, pretty early. The letter from the church of Smyrna relates that Jews joined forces with the pagans in denouncing Polycarp as one who resisted the state religion, and that they cried, "This is the teacher of Asia and father of Christians, the puller down of our gods, who teaches numbers not to sacrifice nor to worship." So that's the pagan accusation, but Jewish folks, according to the Christian sources, were joining in at that time. They were one with the pagans in demanding his death, and they diligently assisted in gathering timber for his burning, although it took place on the Sabbath day. That's according to the Christian source. So my point is an act of hostility that remained from John's time to Polycarp's time. And I do want to remind everybody that according to early church tradition, Polycarp was a disciple of John, follower of John. Jews who strenuously resist the people of Christ are declared to have forfeited their very name, for Jews signify the true people of God, Romans 2:28. But here men who should form the synagogue of the Lord, Numbers 16:3, have become a synagogue of Satan. Notice it deals with the religion. It's saying you're the opposite of what you're supposed to be. No longer the Israel of God, Galatians 6:16. They have degenerated to become tools of the accuser. Now, I want to read this loud and clear. Naturally, this is not to be generalized as though John believed that the whole Jewish nation had become the people of Satan. His description applies to a synagogue which implacably opposed the people of Christ and so perverted its nature. The first of the 7 letters was written to give warning that the Church of Christ can also become perverted and forfeit its character. So the same kind of warning is given to actual churches in this very letter. Read Revelation 2:4-5. So I just want to bring that out, and I think these are good points. And when we put John 8 together with Romans 2, with Revelation 2, and then Revelation 3, because a similar verse appears in Revelation 3:9, then we understood what's being said. And it's not what Hebrew Israelites are saying, and it's not what the movie that Kyrie retweeted, Hebrews to Negroes by Ron Dalton. It's not what that movie is saying. That's not, because it uses Revelation 2:9 as well. It's not what IUI is saying, and I'm gonna just go ahead and go there. It's also not what the Christian rapper Bizzle's saying, because he used Revelation 2:9 against the Jewish people in a recent song of his called Bamboozled, and became apparently so irritated that I criticized him on it that he blocked me on Instagram and tried to have the video taken down off YouTube. But he's wrong about Revelation 2:9 as much as I respect the rest of his ministry. Let me stop there.
One quick question about Bizzle, and we've got some stuff we can pull up and look at. How long has he been called Bizzle? Because I've been the Dizzle since like 2007. So I just want to know who's copying whom here.
He's been around a while, man. I don't know, man. He's been around a while. I don't know how.
How long was he called Bizzle? That's all. If he says 2004 or something like that, all right, he wins. But if he's like if he started calling himself Bizzle in like 2009 or something, then he's got to drop that because he stole that. Um,
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. Yeah.
I'm the true Dizzle.
Well, I'll let you guys battle that out.
This Amalekite Bizzle trying to be the real Dizzle. All right. Hey, you want to check out some of these flyers? I also have the clip. Yeah, let's look at these.
Well, since we mentioned Bizzle, can we show the post that Bizzle had posted that he tried to prove this point via another way? Do you have the one with the Egyptian president, Abdel Nasser, or no?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, because since we've just brought that up, I'm going to briefly show it, because here's what I want to show, David. I want to show that this idea that the Jewish people are frauds religiously and ethnically, in the way that kind of anti-Semitic tropes would have you believe, this idea, sometimes people try to prove it via other means.
Mm-hmm.
And here's an old post. Now, thankfully, Bizzle has taken this down once I asked him about it.
Well, it's really stupid.
Yeah, so, can you read it? Tell me
why
you think it's stupid and read it. I'd love to hear
So he's sharing some sort of meme, and then he's got his comments. So the meme says, "They left black. The war for Israel." And I've got Time magazine there. And it says, when he was asked about peace in the Middle East, the late president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, stated, "The Jews will never be able to live here in peace because they left here black but came back white." And then the Bizzle, who wants to be the Dizzle, says, "Wow, came across this quote yesterday. There's a lot that has been hidden. I'll be breaking it down little by little in the future, but a quote like this can't be swept under the rug. A lot of prophecy relies on where Israel is, what they're doing, etc. Usually when someone predicts end times, they do it based on the fact that they believe Israel has already been gathered back into their land. So this is definitely interesting, to say the least." Now, the vocab, I'm not familiar with everything going on here, but this seems so insanely stupid, right? Because
Why is that?
Because you're using something that was said by a leader of Egypt when he says Jews went out black and came back white. Notice, if you're saying this is some sort of evidence, you would have to assume that the president of Egypt, former president of Egypt, he knows about this conspiracy, right? Like, he knows that black people are the true Jews, and that, light-skinned Jews are imposters, and they have somehow been aware of this all this time, and he's now letting the cat out of the bag. Hey guys, we know that they were black, but now they're white, so they changed, and so he's somehow telling the truth. Like, why would you think this guy has he's somehow in on that?
Yeah, and also, wouldn't he have to be like 3,500 years old to know this?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, okay, so there must be some conspiracy that has been successful for a long time, and somehow this guy is in it. Like, they have their own, like, book of secrets, right? Like, they have, like once you become president of Egypt, they hand the book to you, and you open the book, and it's got all these secrets in it. And one of the secrets is, oh, by the way, Jews were originally black.
Yeah, and check this out. That Time magazine cover is from September 26, 1955. It's on a Monday. And that Time magazine cover in its physical version used to be able to be found, and I believe it's still there. I'm just saying, it's been a couple years since my research associate, who I'm talking about, but I won't say who he is, went down there and physically checked it out and went through it and looked at every single page, and guess what he did not find?
Didn't find that quote?
He didn't find it. So you know what we did, because everybody can't get a hold of the physical copy? We found the digital copy online. And I have the digital content from it, and I've read the entire, and it's not there. The quote does not exist. It's a fabrication. It's not there. And so it's a shame that anybody would share this, but especially, a Christian hip-hop artist, and he took it down, but he never told people it was wrong. And so if it's true that this is all true, then why do we need to rely on fake quotes from Abdel Nasser and Hitler? Because the movie that Kyrie shared also had a fake quote from Hitler, and I think we already covered that one. But why would we need to rely on these things if it's so true? And notice we're having to go kind of outside the Bible now to prove our Revelation 2:9 interpretation. We're saying, well, look, here's the evidence. but it's all literally made up. You don't need to make up stuff like this if it's true, but this is the kind of thing that happens in these realms, and it's a shame that you have Christians falling for it and believe in it. It's a real shame, and we need to do better, guys. It makes me wonder, is there something about us that makes us want to believe stuff like this, you know? I mean, it's bad enough we're saying you, if you're religiously practicing Judaism, you've rejected Jesus as the Messiah. And if you rejecting the apostles as essentially a continuation of God's mouthpiece, like the Old Testament prophets, and therefore then you reject the scriptures that are written by them, just like the prophets of old, the apostles, and those associated with them in the New Covenant documents. It's bad enough we're having to say, if you're rejecting all that, you are rejecting what the Old Testament promised. You know what I mean? I mean, it's good news, but I'm saying when you're focusing on the rejection of modern-day Judaism, of the Christ, it's tough. It's some hard conversations you got to have, right? It's not easy to talk about these things, but we have to tell the truth and be honest in love. But my goodness, it's worse when people go around and plus you are malicious ethnic imposters and we're the real Jews. You know, it's like, first of all, it's not true, but second of all, it's an unneeded stumbling block in a conversation that Christians do need to have with people who practice Judaism, whether they be of Jewish descent or not. And really, the of Jewish descent element is really not very relevant to the modern Christian. At least it shouldn't be. I'm not saying their background doesn't matter, because God made you how you are, who you are, for a purpose, for a reason. But I'm saying that it's about having the faith after Abraham, who believed in God, it was counted to him for righteousness, versus some ethnic claim. And what does Titus 3:9 say? Hey, man, that stuff's foolish. That stuff is genealogies that are just foolish controversies. 1 Timothy 1:12 says, don't get caught up in endless genealogies, because they promote speculation instead of knowledge. That's literally what these guys do. They hold charts all about endless genealogies. You know, it's wrong. It's messed up. So, anyways, it's just bring that out. Man, people are commenting about my background. I see. Go ahead, though.
No, you can't pay attention. People say you can't pay attention to what everyone said. No, isn't it just amazing? Because it really reminds me, like, of how Muslim apologists read the Bible. You know what I mean? Like, you've already decided what your position is, and you're going to search through it and pick out verses, and then connect verses from different books and different contexts together in order to get something that you agree with, while missing the entire point, right? While missing the big picture. So you have the gospel. And so Jesus comes bringing the gospel of the kingdom of God, and then the apostles go out, and shocking enough to them, the Gentiles can be saved too. We all get grafted into the same tree. This is some amazing stuff about tearing down walls that have historically divided people based on class and gender and ethnicity and so on. And then these guys miss everything, and it's all about, it's all about the genealogy. You got to have the genealogy, and all that other stuff, not really interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's just like when Muslims read the Bible, and they'll go and so Muslims will go to Deuteronomy 18:18. Prophets coming after Moses. You see, this must be Muhammad. And they don't read 2 verses later, which completely rules out Muhammad as a prophet at all. And it's just I don't know, man. This is why you're pointing it out with like the Bizzle, and he'll share that. And then at some point he'll realize it's stupid, but he doesn't correct it. Meanwhile, a bunch of people have absorbed that completely ridiculous. I mean, that thing, as far as, the Egyptian president, I mean, that is like insanely idiotic. I mean, that is incredibly, like, how could anyone fall for that in a second? And yet, it'll still spread all over the place. And it's like, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like urban legends. Mm-hmm. If people are familiar with urban legends, like, parents will still take their kids' candy that they gathered to a hospital to have it x-rayed because of stories about people putting razor blades in candy. It's never happened. There's no record of it ever happening. But as soon as someone started the story, it spread so rapidly that no one could do anything about it. The old story, if you're driving down a road in the dark and someone's driving towards you and their lights are off and you flash them their lights, it's actually a gang initiation and they have to kill whoever flashes the lights and so on. There's no record of that ever happening. A man walks into a bar and a lady says, let me give you a drink. And then he wakes up later in a tub of ice in a hotel room and there's a phone there and it turns out his kidney's been removed. It's never happened. There's no record of any of these things ever happening. Yet the stories, they spread so far, so fast, you can't stop them once they start. And you can correct them all you want. And you've got the majority of people still believe that these things have happened, even though it's total nonsense. And so, yeah, I guess if you just say it, I mean, vocab, think. I mean, at some point, Bizzle saw that meme. Never crossed his mind to think seriously about it. Never crossed his mind to investigate it or go to that magazine or anything like that. Just instantly shared because, it resonates with him somehow emotionally or something like that. And then instantly shares it. And that's how some of this stuff spreads, man. It's wild stuff.
Bad news. I just shared a video where Tony Ray, and I hosted on my channel from Hazakim, debunked that Abdul Nasser meme a number of years ago. And the reason why it's relevant in the Bizzle case with the Revelation 2:9 is because he just put out a song called Bamboozled, which actually has a good amount of truth in it, but it's muddied up by the parenthetical implication. So the song's called Bamboozled, and then in parentheses says Revelation 2:9, and then in the song he says these fake Jews, and he refers to them controlling the media, controlling Hollywood, and all that kind of stuff, all those tropes, in a song that actually does make some good points, but it's all messed up with this stuff. And it's a shame to see Christians going down that route, but they are, and that's why we got to get a handle on verses like Revelation 2:9 that are misused by these folks.
Yeah, and that's, you pointing out that, it has a lot of truth in it. That doesn't, it's like, when I hear that, it's like, well, that doesn't make it better. That actually makes it like more dangerous. Yeah. Like the job of a counterfeiter, someone who's making counterfeit, let's say $100 bills, the goal of a counterfeiter is not to make something that looks ridiculous and cartoonish. It's to make something that looks authentic. It has enough of the what it's supposed to look like to fool people. And so, yeah, if someone ever comes up to you with 100% lies, you don't need to worry about that guy. He's not going to get far. It's when someone's coming out with, 99.9% truth, but that 0.1% is really demonic, evil stuff. And you say, oh, well, he's so right about all this other stuff. Let me accept that little 0.1% that's demonic nonsense. Those are the guys who end up, starting cults and so on. I consider Bizzle a brother from what I know of him, although I'm unclear on his stance on the Trinity, and I'm trying to get answers about that. But this anti-Semitism creeping into any form of true Christianity is a real problem. Let me just share one verse again, or commentary. You got something? Go ahead. I just wanted to ask you something real quick because I did want to clarify something. So you could. And you could believe that blacks and Hispanics in America are the true Jews and nevertheless have a correct understanding of the gospel, right? Like that would be possible. You could be a Christian and have a belief that you are the true Jews and be wrong about it and not be part of some cult, right? Would that be correct?
Yeah, I've met a few people who I think would actually meet those parameters. Yep. So
I was just thinking about that because you were saying, you what you think about Bizzle. So Bizzle could be sharing that and think that he's true, and yet still have a correct understanding of other things.
Yeah. Okay. And it's gonna remain to be seen because some of this seems like stuff he's been toying with for a while. He's got some people in his camp who are into this. And, the song just dropped. That's why this is relevant. When all this is going on, while IUIC is out there saying we're the real Jews and you guys are the fake Jews. Can you share that clip, that video? I think that'll be instructive because people can see here you have places where you have Christians agreeing with open cultists about their dislike or distrust or whatever for the Jewish people. That's a dangerous thing. But can you share that clip where IUIC is marching around? This is at Prospect Park, I think, or close to it, where that structure is, and they're outside there, and they're on their way to the Barclays Center, and they're doing their chants already.
Yeah, let's see if this is the clip you're talking about.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to, just, because it's only up on the screen for a second, but someone who's sharing this as paramilitary type Black Hebrew formation at Grand Army Plaza, singing on a loop, "Hey Jacob, it's time to wake up. I've got good news for you. We are the real Jews," giving out leaflets on the truth about slavery too. All right, let's go ahead and watch this, listen to them. Now they're behind some bushes, so you can't really see. But as far as the heads over they look pretty deep out there, man.
They're very deep out there. The cops didn't gonna give the media numbers estimates, so we don't know how many they were. But we do know at their annual march that they did in Detroit in July that there was about 1,000 guys out there. I don't think there was 1,000 in this particular event, but IUIC specifically, and that's not the only Hebrew Israelite group. I hope people understand. This is just the one who specializes in the dog and pony show. Not all of them are for that, but IUIC is for that, and they can do it pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. And they're also quick on the social media element of the cultic side of proselytization. So they've been heavy on that too. Could you share the one they recently made on their Twitter that has Kyrie Irving on one side and a Jewish rabbi on another? And I want you to please point out what Bible verse is placed on this theme that is relevant to this conversation. You see that?
Yeah, it's up there. So yeah, they have a verse on top and a verse on bottom, and on the left side there they have a rabbi and it says fake, and they give him like black evil eyes.
Yeah, you notice how they took out the whites of his eyes?
Yeah.
What the heck? That's literally dehumanizing somebody. Literally dehumanizing somebody.
Giving them shark eyes.
That's like animalistic eyes. And it's interesting because remember Kyrie said, "Don't dehumanize me. I'm a person." I'm not saying that Kyrie did this, but I'm saying they're literally dehumanizing somebody that is like a Jewish man, ostensibly,
Yeah, and so, they've got the two faces here, and Kyrie is the true Jew, and the rabbi is the fake Jew. And so they have Revelation 2:9 up there.
Yeah, and they have the red letter, the red writing on the left side.
Red letters, black eyes.
Yeah, and then it's interesting on the right side they have white letters, and they allow Kyrie to have white in his eyes. So that's what they're doing. That's what they're dropping. That's what they're about. And these guys in this cult can't just say, "We're the real Israelites." They don't feel like the pie of modern day Jewry is big enough for, I guess, both of them to fit. It's like the old sheriff, there's not room enough for both of us in this town, or what is it? This town's not big enough for both of us, whatever it is, right? That seems to be their attitude. So they go after Jewish folks with a great hatred. They constantly accuse me of working for some Jewish cabal. And they actually...
Yeah, the FBI.
Yeah, well, but yeah, they'll say he's employed by the small hats or the Jesuits. There's another famous, but they seem to think the Jesuits are run by the Jewish people as well. It's a little bizarre, but I get
that I'm paid by the Jesuits all the time too, because I went to a Jesuit school.
Yeah, well, I went to I went to a Christian evangelical school, so.
Yeah. No. It's just funny because I mean, it's like you think that someone who goes to a Jesuit school is a Jesuit. Like probably 99.9% of the people who go there. I mean, the Jesuits are a pretty small group. They're a pretty small group. The idea that all these thousands of students are all Jesuits is anyway.
And I think they're pretty liberal these days as well in their theology.
Oh yeah. Like I had. Well, I mean, I like Jesuits because they're big on philosophy and they take it as like their mission from God. To understand philosophy and so on, so they're big on philosophy. But I mean, I probably like 2 of my professors ever were actual Jesuits. Just like it's run by Jesuit, but yeah, there were atheists teaching there as well.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway,
did I send you any other memes or images or videos? I can't remember if I sent you anything.
Let me see. So I have this from Kyrie. It says, "True heritage is true education. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are the true biblical Israelites." And it quotes Jeremiah 17:4 there. "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever." So I guess the claim there is, since you will serve your enemies in a land you know not, this must mean that black people who are taken to, from Africa to the Americas are this group here.
Right, and notice they have Kyrie Irving. It's almost like him, serving people in a foreign land who are his enemies.
I get it. Oh, still now.
Mark Cuban is Jewish.
Oh, I get it. I didn't understand it before. So they're saying he's still serving.
Yeah, basically, and so the IUIC did a rap song about this whole event, and in it they referred to some of the newscasters who were making comments as $40 million a year slaves.
Yeah, I just have to say, hey, Mark Cuban, I will give me some of that Kyrie money, and I will come play ball as well.
Yeah, now of course, Cuban, is Dallas Mavericks, so he's hiring, Christian Wood and Spencer Dinwiddie, and of course Luka Doncic. But nonetheless, I mean, they're making that point there. But I want to read one more thing because this shows how specific Revelation 2:9 is. Because this conversation is really to talk about Revelation 2:9 and the ways it's been perverted here. And there's a lot more we could say. But here's another commentary, great commentary, "The Returning King: A Guide to the Book of Revelation." Vern Poythress, and look at what he says on page 86, because this shows you how specific this persecution is. "Smyrna is one of 2 churches for whom Christ gives encouragement and not rebuke. Smyrna faced serious persecution, including even death. Christ's assurance begins with underlining the fact that he is victorious over death. Non-Christian Jews may have been trying to get Christians in trouble by claiming that the church was not another Jewish sect, but an essentially non-Jewish group. If so, in the eyes of the Roman government, they could, like all Gentiles, be required to show political loyalty to the government by participating in emperor worship. If they refused, as Christians must, they could be executed for treason." I'm going to comment on that in a second, but let me just read this next line about the synagogue of Satan in this verse here. "Such a situation would explain the phrase synagogue of Satan. The Jewish synagogue in Smyrna was not composed of all the Jews in the area, nor of people who was not composed of all Jews in the area, nor of people who had never heard of Jesus Christ, but specifically of Jews who rejected the gospel. Doubtless some Jews had responded favorably to the gospel and joined the church. The Jews who rejected Jesus professed to worship God, but their opposition to Christ showed that they were in fact under the control of satanic darkness, 2 Corinthians 4:4. Behind human opposition stands the more fundamental opposition of Satan, who seeks by all means to destroy the church." So this even gets into the specifics of how some of this persecution could have worked, because Jewish folks were allowed an exemption by Roman authorities for most of their existence under Roman occupation in regards to having to swear to the genius of the emperor or being involved with the cult of the emperor. Because even though a lot of Romans viewed Jewish people as weird, they respected the antiquity of their religion, because Romans were they had a respect for older things, basically, and that was one of their attractions to Judaism. And so one way that Christians could get in trouble is if they're viewed as a non-Jewish sect. And once that happened, Christian persecution got worse and worse. And so that's part of what was happening in certain areas, perhaps, as you see this kind of, hey, these aren't fellow Jews. They're not truly Jewish. Somewhat similar to what you might have some people say about a Jewish person who believes in Jesus as Messiah today, even. And you have that, and that could open a door for persecution even then. Now, we don't know all the means or the ways, but I bring that out to show you again how specific to a certain situation this is here in Revelation 2:9, and it would really line up again with what Jesus said in John 8. He's talking to people who are clearly of Jewish descent ethnically, yet says you're of your father the devil. That's the same thing because of the lying and the slander by persecutors of Christians at this time. That's what Revelation 2:9 is about. It's not to be used as some kind of anti-Semitic hammer against anybody who we're trying to say is actually a fraud, an ethnic imposter. And the only reason people are trying to do that is because they want to put themselves in the shoes. You know, I'm not full Sicilian. I'm part Sicilian. I wish I was. But I'm not going to claim something I'm not. So I don't go around claiming to be full-blooded Sicilian. I say what I am or what I know what I am ethnically, but it's really not the most important thing in my identity. It's an important thing, right? But it's not the most important thing. My goodness, my identity in Christ is first and foremost. And that really should go for everybody, regardless of the struggles they've had in that area or not, because we've got to fall under his authority and not seek after the flesh, which is what Hebrew Israelism really is all about. It's a religion that it commits the sin of idolatry of ethnicity. And the shame of it is it's not even an accurate ethnicity that they're idolizing because it's not their own.
And it's just, I mean, it's so amazing that you have Jesus laying down his life after performing miracles, feeding thousands, walking on water, raising the dead, dies, rises from the dead. His followers go out to make disciples of all nations. And then people who clearly, and I mean, you know, these Hebrew Israelites, they clearly read their Bibles and somehow miss all of the main message and focus on, again, as you pointed out, little genealogies and so on. Wild stuff, but I'm sure everyone does that to an extent, right? Certain things come along and they, make you feel, make you feel good or make you feel important, and so on, and so you tend to favor those views a little bit more. But yeah, you can't ignore the dangerous implications of certain views, and this seems like one where, if it reaches a certain critical mass, could be pretty bloody.
Yeah, and I mean, the article that I referenced earlier in this conversation that I was interviewed for, a great article, by the way, from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, and I shared it on Twitter so everyone can look at it. Let me just share real quick what the title is, because it relates to that. And here it is. How many Hebrew Israelites are there, and how worried should Jews be? It's a legit question. Check it out at Twitter at JTA News. And, listen, when I promote this stuff or tell you to read it, I'm a Christian, so Jesus is the Messiah, so I'm not, surrendering that. But I'm just saying there's some good work being done by some Jewish journalists in this area, and they're letting people know what's really going on. And I was glad to be interviewed by them. And I hope that they can see that the New Testament is not anti-Semitic, and that Christians definitely should not be anti-Semitic. And I hope they're able to see that when we talk and interact and stand in defense, first and foremost, of the gospel, But sometimes we need to be the friend of the oppressed. And I think the Jewish people, oftentimes, especially when you look at the global situation, the historical situation, that's a condition they find themselves. Not the only people, just because you say one group's press or their life matters doesn't mean you're saying another's doesn't. Because we've also said, I think it was even, I don't remember when it was, but we even said things about Black Lives Matter, the sentiment that people may disagree with, where we had some positive things about some things there to say. So anyways, I don't want to ramble too long. There's a lot here, and it's a lot of controversial stuff, a lot of landmines. But I hope people see a little bit better now what's going on in Revelation. Because in the first opening chapters of Revelation, Jesus, as he speaks to John, as John is locked away on the Isle of Patmos, Jesus is telling John messages that he wants to give to 7 churches in Asia Minor. And as Jesus gives these messages, there's correction, there's condemnation, there's rebuke, there's all kinds of different things that Jesus gives to these actual, physical, real churches that were there. And some continue. And at the church of Smyrna, Revelation 2:9 happens in that context. And they're facing persecution. And Jesus gives them encouragement in the face of their persecution, in the face of their trial, to say, listen, you're being attacked ultimately by Satan. Those folks are saying they're one thing, but they're really not following after the religion of Abraham, regardless of their ethnicity. You actually, I believe that ultimately when you read Revelation, when you read John's writing as a whole, you as the people of God are following that, especially when you read Paul in Galatians 3. And the same idea pops up in Revelation 3:9. The same thing at the Church of Philadelphia. A very similar verse happens in Revelation 3:9. We could have done another show just on that, and you could see the similarities between Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9. So that's a context, is Jesus giving encouragement in the face of persecution. And some of the persecution in these very specific instances is coming by people who would view themselves as religious, members of the synagogue, Jews who practice Judaism. But we saw that already in the book of Acts. We saw men of the synagogue who were split, and some would attack Christians and some would listen to Christians. We saw that during Jesus' own day with the Pharisees, and you had people like Nicodemus, and then you had members of the Sanhedrin like Joseph of Arimathea, and then others who were obviously against Jesus to the point of wanting to crucify him. So that has always happened and will happen, but that doesn't mean that then we're saying, oh, this means that all you Jewish people are actually satanic imposters and frauds. That's not what it's about. It's about something very different. And so I hope that people understand that better today, because this verse is going to be brought up again and again by anti-Semitic groups like Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, ladies and gentlemen, the church very frequently tends to wait to respond to cults until the cults are everywhere, and then they get worried. In other words, lots of people didn't get worried about Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff till they're knocking on the door, right? Then it becomes a concern, and it seems like a lot of Christians aren't going to worry about the Black Hebrew Israelites until these guys are knocking on their church's door, standing outside their churches and so on, and then they'll suddenly become concerned about it. It would be much better, if you ask me, if at least some Christians in all the different cities where the Hebrew Israelites are active would actually learn responses to their verses. And one of the most basic steps for any cult is when they're giving you a verse, if something sounds like it's off, just go ahead and pause and go read the chapter. Go read the chapter. If you can, look up some commentaries and so on to get the historical context and so on. But it's a good practice to get into, because you have the Hebrew Israelites, and they'll use tons of verses, but they have a pretty small collection of their go-to verses. And so why wouldn't you want to familiarize yourself with those chapters and those verses and the background so that you can respond effectively and help stop what looks like a pretty bad cult here. So anyway, if you want to do that, if you want to learn, I recommend going to Vocab's channel. It's got a lot of content there, and you see videos of him actually interacting on the street with the Hebrew Israelites. The link to Vocab's channel, and what are you pointing to Ohio State for?
Because even though they lost today, I'm still standing in solidarity with them against the evil school from up north that wears blue and yellow, and people who are wicked like Carm are known to support in their weaker moments. But OHIO, go Bucks.
Well, both your teams suck, but everyone should check out Vocab's channel. And also, there's a link to Vocab's latest book. You want to give a quick plug for your book real quick before we sign out?
Street Level Apologetics, which gives you some practical tips about how to have conversations with people with apologetics infused into the conversation in all kinds of situations, but especially in conversations, with strangers and in urban environments where certain contexts bring about different questions that you may not normally hear in kind of more mainstream type apologetic conversations. So that's what Street Level Apologetics is. Very user friendly, has some great contributors in there like Adam Coleman, our friend, and some others. So everyone that's got it so far that I know that read it said has been very helpful, very practical, and has inspired them to want to do evangelism. So I'm excited about that. And it's still not even a year old, so get it for somebody for Christmas, that type of thing.
All right, so we will, I'm sure, be back in the future to discuss more about the Hebrew Israelites in addition to many other topics. Everyone should be learning. Christians, keep in mind, you are commanded to do apologetics. You are not commanded to be some sort of full-time apologist, but you are commanded to do apologetics. That's 1 Peter 3:15. I would encourage you to learn the core doctrines that you're supposed to be able to defend, Jesus' death, resurrection, and deity, for instance. But also figure out a group that you think you might be you might be running into, whether that happens to be Muslims or some cult, and learn some responses to their most common arguments. And if Christians around the world would do this, I think we would change the world. All right. Catch you all next time.